Welcome back. I hope everybody had a good weekend. All right, so welcome back. If you haven't already, please do open Microsoft Office. And then from the email I sent you today, we are going to extract some data from the worksheet. So you should have received this email. So when you open your blank workbook, the email I sent you says Excel 03. We're actually number 4. So we're going to save this as Excel 04. And this is going to be travel planning budget. So our goal today is to work on a budget for a group that's going on a trip. They want to know how much each person has to pay, what the costs are, and to calculate out some percentages. So that's one of the things we're going to do. We're going to add percentages into our workbooks, and then we're going to work with sales tax, and then a thing called absolute formulas. Absolute formulas are very similar to the formulas we've been using. They just have a little twist on them to keep Excel from changing their numbers as we go along. So you'll see that as we enter them. So the first thing we're going to do is when you open up Excel, please create a new workbook. And we're going to have two tabs. The first tab, sheet 1, is going to be trip budget. And say okay to that. We're going to create a new tab. Click the little plus. And change that name. And we're going to call this one cost analysis. So that'll give us 2 worksheets in our workbook. All right, so we'll just start with trip budget. So when you open the link I sent, you should have this. It's called Best Travel Adventures. And it's got some information in here, including the costs of some items. So we're going to select all the data and transfer it over. So it's going to go from cell A1 down to I32. And again, you can select all, Control A. We're going to copy that. Go back to our new blank workbook. And that's going to be the trip budget. So in A1, I'm going to paste. Okay, so that one's good. I'm going to switch over to cost analysis. I'm going to go back. And the original, here's the cost analysis. And I'm going to do a quick refresh because it's slowing things down. There we go. And this is going to be A1. Down to H37. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, get my marching ants. And then this time, instead of pasting into A1, I'm going to go down to A3 and paste. We're doing this for a couple of reasons. One is to show you don't have to always paste A1 to A1. You can leave some extra room up here in case you want to put something in later. Or even if you paste it into A1, you know how to insert rows. So you could always do that too. Either way. But sometimes when you're extracting data from another worksheet, it may not necessarily go to A1. You know, it could be a smaller portion of your worksheet and end up being just at a different, you could paste it at D5 and have other things around it. So that's going to give us 2 rows at the top, and you'll see rows 1 and 2 are empty. The only thing you cannot do is, I'm going to go down below here, down to A70. If I select a group of cells that's smaller than the cells I'm trying to paste, I'm going to get an error when I paste. So see how it'll expand it? So you want to watch that. There are certain times that if you select the destination, if you just put a starting point, then it will grow out from there, as you'll see. And that's what we've been doing. On the other hand, sometimes you want to put it in a very specific place. So if you do that, they have to have the same number of cells. They don't have to be the same size. As you've seen, the computer will adjust it, but it does have to be the same number of cells. Okay, so that's what we wanted. And just to keep things clean and tidy, I'm going to go back to my original. I'm going to close it. Just because I don't need it anymore, and it'll keep my windows cleaner. There we go. Great. So on cell C1 above best travel adventures, I'm going to put in cost analysis. So even though I have it on my tab down below, that doesn't print. It doesn't show up on the final worksheet if you print it on a piece of paper, or if you convert it to a PDF format, the tabs don't show up. So that's why you can put it more than once. And we're good to go. As a general rule, by the way, I like to have that information show in two places, just because when you're working on it, it's kind of handy to see it at the top and the bottom. So it reminds you which screen you're working on. So we're going to switch to trip budget and start working from there. Now, in this case, you'll notice our page 2, the cost analysis, has the style we need here that we want to put on trip budget. So I'm going to click on cell A3 now, because that's where best travel adventures shows up. I'm going to use my format painter. Go to trip budget and click on A1, and you'll see it comes over. So this time we're extracting the formatting from the second tab onto the first tab, meaning you can transfer formatting from any tab to any tab. Okay, so that gives us the title. Down below, we're going to need to stretch out our columns. So I'm just going to stretch out A and B so I can see the whole description. The description is going to take up a lot of space, but it's important because it's going to distinguish between the different items. And sometimes there's not a lot of difference. Like you'll see whitewater rafting the first day and whitewater rafting the second day. It's only the word first and second. So it's important to see the entire description. We've got item cost. We've got cost per person. And then we've got over here on the right-hand side, this little group of information. So this is going to be an analysis of this data. So once we get this done, we're going to come over here and do some calculations. You'll see our budget per person is not wide enough. So I'm going to widen column I so I can see $2,000. Our goal is to get everybody in at $2,000. So far, we have 12 signed up. All right, so that's going to make a difference later on. All right, in our trip budget, you'll see the word travel or title has already got some formatting. So I'm going to format paintbrush, item cost, number of items, and cost per person. Now, it's a little large, so I am going to shrink down the font. So we get it to 10 points. Then I'm going to click on these three, and I'm going to click on something we used last week, the wrap text. So wrap text is up here. And then I'm going to center a line. All right. All right, we're ready for some formulas. So these are pretty straightforward. Every person is going to have to purchase what's in column A at the cost listed in column C, and some things will have to purchase multiple ones of. So there's a number of items. So we want to calculate here the cost per person. So this is the net cost. So this is a pretty straight formula, equal sign, and it's going to be C11 times, and remember asterisk is times, D11. Okay, and I can visually just quick double check it. Yeah, there it is. 1 times 1,125 is 1,125. I can fill handle it down. Oh yeah, that's working. So we'll bring it to the bottom here. The question is, can I expand my workbook? I can try this. I can zoom it. The problem is it will make everything a bit smaller. So let me try. Changing my formula, switch ribbons. It gives us a little bit more room. Hope that helps. Okay, so here we have our cost per person. Okay, we're going to make a quick change here. So this cost per person is going to be the original cost per person. So we're going to put this as initial. Okay, because there's one more thing we need to add. So what we're going to do is we're going to add sales tax. Everything here we're going to say is taxable. So up at the top here in cell B2, I'm going to put sales tax rate as a title. I'm going to use the right alignment. And then cell C2, I'm going to put in our sales tax. Does anybody know what our sales tax is? 7.88%. Now what I can do is I can put a percent here and it will pick up the percentage format. Okay. If you wanted to, you could put 0.0788 and that give you the same thing. The advantage to using Excel is it does figure out the percentages if you use the percent symbol. So there we go. I don't know if you know this, but California's sales tax is 7.25%. So if you take the QuickBooks class, we go into the different sales tax jurisdictions. Why is it 0.63% higher? Well, we in Stanislaus County, in our wisdom, have decided to fund the libraries through a sales tax addition. It comes up every couple of years. The people who are for it are pretty sharp, and they turned it into a summertime standalone election, meaning it's a mail-in ballot only now, and it goes out to has to be renewed, but it goes out during a non-presidential election and even non-midterm election. It's its own election. And cynics say the reason they did that is they know that because it's on its own, only people who really care about the libraries will vote for it. And people who just say, meh, don't worry about it. But if it's a presidential election, a lot of people will vote, and while they're there, they might see this tax and say, no more taxes, and vote it down. So it will come up again. I mean, you see it, now you know what it is if you haven't seen it before. But that gives us 7.88%. So it's a little higher. If you go to Los Angeles, you pay even higher because they have a county tax plus a city tax. So each jurisdiction can have their own tax rate. So you want to have that correct. As a retail business here, we're going to have to collect the correct sales tax and turn it over to the state. Okay, so we need to calculate that. So I'm going to click on column F. I'm going to change my ribbons real quick so I can go into cells, insert, and I want to insert sheet column. Okay. So the other way to do that is I can right click with my right mouse button, or if you're Apple, it's Command, and you'll see here's a short list of different commands, cut, copy, etc. And you can see there's insert columns too. So this is another way to do that. And then you don't have to make your ribbon up here so big. Okay, so now I'm going to type in sales tax and then final cost per person. I'm going to take my initial cost per person. I want to use my format paintbrush, so I'm going to switch ribbons real quick and make these two titles the same. Now you'll notice that as I use the paintbrush, it not only did the font, the underline, but it also did the wrap text. So that is a formatting issue. And so that's carried over when you use the format paintbrush. And anytime you don't want it, you can always turn it off individually. Just it depends if you have room for it. Okay, so now we need to do the sales tax for column E. So no problem here. It's going to be equal sign, and then E11. So this is the amount per person, and we want to multiply it by the sales tax. Where is that? I want to put an asterisk for times. It's up here at C2. All right, I hit enter, $89. And in fact, I'm going to change my ribbon. I know it's rounding up, so I want to increase decimal 2 places. There we go. So it's a little bit more exact. All right. So there's the sales tax. Now I'm ready to fill it down, handle it down. But watch what happens when I try. See what happens? I get a bunch of zeros, I get an error. Here's why. The first one is correct. It says up here, E11 times C2, right. When I handle it down, now it says E12, but now it changed that C2 to C3. Well, let's take a look at what's in C3. Nothing. Same with C4, same with C5, same with C6, and then we'll get down here to C7. It's a date, and that's where that value is coming in. It's an error. So you'll see that's an error. So when we were over here calculating the initial cost and we did the fill handle, it was correct to advance each of these rows forward 1, meaning the first one you could see C11 times D11. Okay? As we fill handle it down, the computer advanced each one to C12 times D12, and then so forth, right? So the computer has the right idea, but just didn't do it right. We want to change our formula here. So we're going to use what's called an absolute formula. The absolute formula tells the computer, don't change the cell. And how we tell the computer to do that is with dollar signs. And I don't know why they picked dollar signs, but they did. So I'm going to put a dollar sign before the C and dollar sign before the 2. Okay. When I hit enter, see, it didn't change my number. It's still 8865. That's good. But the dollar sign means lock in place column C and lock in place row 2. So it locks that cell. As I fill, if I fill it down to the right, it shouldn't change C2. It should always go back and multiply by C2. Well, let's see if it's going to work. I'll try a couple. Ta-da. So if I move down to F12, sure enough, it did move from E11 to E12, which is right, times C2. And again, as I go down, now it's 13 times C2. See how that works? Technically, I don't need the dollar sign before the C. So when you use these, by the way, I don't even try to think about it because right now I have to think, all right, is it the column I don't want to change or the row number I don't want to change? Right now, I can tell you that since I'm going vertically, the column doesn't matter. It's always going to try to do C, right? So like we did here, it's always D. Oops, I ran off the page there. So the initial cost is always D. Here in the sales tax, it doesn't matter. It's always going to be column C. It's just row 2. I don't want it to go down this way, right? I have no intention of fill handling this way. Ta-da. That wouldn't make any sense for me. So technically I only need the 2 there and watch what happens. Yeah, it did it right. However, like I said, you can figure that out. It doesn't make any difference. You saw my totals. And there is one reason I would want to do this with a dollar sign C, dollar sign 2 to lock into both column and row. And here's why. First of all, I don't want to think about it. I know I always want this C2 to show up. So I don't want to think about whether I'm filling in rows or columns. So that's one reason that's good enough for me. That's why I always do it. The other thing though is, sure, it doesn't matter right now. However, you'll see later on, there's a couple of maneuvers you can do. You could transpose these instead of columns, you could turn them into rows. And then if you fill handle, you might accidentally just do it without realizing it. So locking in C2 means if you ever change your data, it'll still keep going to C2 no matter what format you put it in. Then if you say, oh, wait, that's not right, then you can go make modifications. But at least it keeps you where you started, if that makes any sense. So I just automatically put in dollar sign C, dollar sign 2, and know that it's locked. So I'm going to fill handle this all the way down. And there it goes. See, my absolute is working. And I can tell because when I click on this 297.86, see now it's E31 times dollar sign C, dollar sign 2. All right. So our final cost is easy. It's just going to be the initial cost plus the sales tax. So that's equal sign E11 plus F11. This time I'm not going to use absolutes because as I fill handle it down after I widen up my column here, you'll see I want it to advance each one to the next row. Okay. So we fill handle this down. Any questions on how that works? So that's always going to be going back to that C2, and that's what an absolute formula does under sales tax. All right. So I'm going to go to column H. I'm going to put in another column. This time I'll right click and insert column. As I mentioned before, sometimes you run into the situation where your Excel worksheet starts running off the page. So you'll notice I have the sales tax listed here as a separate column. Then I have the final cost per person. If somebody's looking at this, they can tell, all right, here's how much the original amount was, the 1,125, and then there's a sales tax, add them together, boom, right? Makes sense. However, I might be short a column, or I just might want to use this as a different style. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two columns, and temporarily, I'm going to delete them. Instead of doing two columns, I could have put just one column and call it cost with sales tax. And you don't have to follow along with this if you don't want to, but it's just another way of doing it. And it makes one less column, but it takes a little bit fancier single formula here. So what I'm going to do is just show one column, and you can see the initial cost, but it's going to be the cost with sales tax. So I'm going to put an equal sign here, and it's going to be E11 times, and what's the sales tax? It's a C2, right? So it's $C, $2. Now that just tells me the tax on that amount. I want to add back in the initial cost. So I put a plus sign, and that's going to be E11. Hit enter, and there's the final amount. So you see how that formula works? And remember, last week when we did, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, since multiplication comes first, it does the multiplication first, and then gives me that resulting small amount plus the initial amount, the initial cost. So it did it all in one shot. I can then fill handle this one down, and because I have that absolute in there, there you go. And then we just saved yourselves a column. If you needed another column, you could do the same thing here. See column E? We really don't need that. I'm just going to hide this one by shrinking it way down. So pretend it's not there. All right. What I could do is modify my formula here. So remember, E11 was just the multiplication of C11 times D11. Okay. Then I have to, that does the sales tax amount, but I have to add back in the C11 times D11. However, I have an addition here. So this time, I'll put it in parentheses. Now, do you have to? No, you don't, but it gets to be a long formula if you don't. So I hit enter, same amount. As I fill handle them down, you'll see it didn't change anything. It just put all the calculations into this one cell. Now you see it's getting kind of long. So like I said, one reason you would do this if you're trying to shorten the number of columns in your worksheet. Also, if you just want to make it simple, you got cost, how many you need, or cost of each item, how many you need, and here's the cost including the sales tax. And the sales tax is up here if you have any questions, right? So it's a much shorter worksheet. I am going to undo what I just did. If it's up to me, my preference is to keep more columns. And I'll tell you why. First of all, here they're back. I think it's good to show your work. Okay, so here, if somebody says, why am I paying so much for, let's pick something here, the transportation, it's only $1,500, but I'm paying $1,680. They can see right here, it's sales tax. It's right in front of them. So you put the numbers in front so it explains itself instead of somebody having to call you up on the phone and say, what, can you explain this? And then you have to go through the whole formulas with them, right? So it's right there in front of them. So it's more data. So if you can, it's better that way, I think. Plus, the other thing is you don't have to get into complicated formulas. Each formula is simple, but you come up with a complicated result and let the computer do the work. And then each column is kind of self-explanatory. But like I said, there are circumstances where you want to make that, when you want to shorten the number of columns. And that's the way to do it. Okay, down below at B33, we're going to put in totals. I'll put a colon, and I want to right align it. And I'll make it bold. So I don't really need to add up the item costs because that's just, how much it costs for each item. It's not really a total, but I do want to do the initial cost for each person. And then if I've got the sales tax in there, might as well do that. And then the final cost per person. Do I really need to do that? No, you could very easily just put the auto sum here. I'll make it bold. And there's the total, right? But somebody is going to have to add up that sales tax because you got to report to the state. So you might as well do it here. And then you could tell the difference between the two. So I'm going to fill handle this to the left. Now you see my E total doesn't have enough room. So I'm going to stretch that out. There we go. And then, I don't know if you notice, like when you get gas, you have stickers up. The price of this gallon of gas is increased by this amount, and it tells you how much you're paying in sales tax. And it's a lot in California. We have a number of different sales taxes on our gas. So it's pretty pricey. But anyway, it gives you information. It tells you exactly how much you're paying in sales tax. Well, you can see here how much we're going to pay in sales tax. Okay. All right, so that's how absolute formulas work. And they're very often used when you have a single number that you're going to use over and over again to multiply. But it could be to divide. If you're doing a division, how much each person gets of a dollar amount, you could do that. It can be an addition. You're always adding 10% of something. Those absolutes are really useful. Now, to be honest with you, could you do this worksheet without knowing what an absolute is? Sure. Let's just say I did that. So you're still going to put in the C2 here, right? Gives me the same amount. But instead of fill handling down, if you copy and paste below, just change that 3 to a 2. And then when you paste below, change that 4 to a 2. You'd have to manually do that. So that's no fun, but it would work and give you the exact same results. So the real reason to use that absolute formula is for fill handles or copy and paste, because as you recall, the other way, instead of fill handling, I'll just delete it real quick, is copy, and then select these cells and paste, Control V. And there you go. So that's why we use the absolutes. And they can be really handy because you see I only had 20 items here, but you could have 1,000. And editing each one would not be fun. There is a sneaky way you could do this. I'll show you real quick here. I could slide over here, say, I'll do it here at O. So what I could do is put in the number just the number. There's no calculation here. So when I fill handle this down, it'll be the same number all the way down. Right? And then when I did my math here for sales tax, instead of the C2, it could be O11. When I print it, I don't print the column O, I just print this stuff here on the left, and nobody can tell I did that. So if you ever forget how to do absolutes, that's the workaround. But I'm going to remove those because now we can do absolutes. Might as well use them. The other side of doing that, by the way, is when you print, Excel will just try to print cells that have content in them. So in other words, I won't try to print 50 pages and then you have to limit it. If you have columns that are not going to appear on your printed page, excuse me, what it'll do is try to include those and you have to manually exclude them. So, again, better to use absolutes. Okay. So now I want to put in a new column, column H. Insert column, because I want to separate these calculations here. Okay, if we look at our bottom, right now, we're projecting that the total cost per person is going to be $32,000. All right. So, first of all, we need to change our budget here. So we're going to change this number from 2,000, sorry everybody, the prices went really high, to an equal sign. And I'm going to select this total here, the $32,310.06. So that is our budgeted cost per person. All right. Now, if we can change these numbers, like let's say, all right, that's really high. Let's see if we can trim away here, like maybe now instead of 5 days, or was it 7 day or 8 days, we'll take away a couple days and that will make it cheaper, things like that. As you make the changes here, they will automatically show up here. I'm going to widen column J. Because now I want to take that figure and come up with the average cost per person if we have 12 people signed up, it's going to be. Oops, overshot. So here we go. In cell K15, where it says actual cost per person, it's going to be an equal sign, K13 divided by, and divide is the slash, the number signed up, 12. That's K14. I hit enter. So there you go. We got it down to the dollar amount of $2,692.51. That's much better. If we split all these costs 12 ways. If we get 4 more people to sign up, oh, even better. So even 1 more signs up, we're under 2,000. This one doesn't have to be an absolute because we are just going to use it in this area here. We're not fill handling anywhere. So, by the way, if you wanted to, there's no reason you can't make it an absolute. You can make both of them absolutes. It just won't make any sense because, oops, we're not fill handling. So it's the same result. So again, the absolute marks don't change the dollar results. They just change how you fill handle. All right, we got our totals. All right, one more thing. In the cost analysis tab, which we're going to work on next, we do have a little shading here. So I'm going to select this and transfer it to Trip Budget. So I'm going to copy it. I could use the format paintbrush, but they're the exact same thing. So I'll just use copy, click on Trip Budget, click on cell A6 Eco Wilderness, paste. And there it is. Okay. All right. Well, if no questions on that, we'll take a 10-minute break. It's 6:53. When we come back, we will work on cost analysis and come up with another fill handle to practice with. So we'll be back at 7:03. Have a good 10-minute break. All right, we are back. All right, so we finished up our trip budget. One thing we want to do is, now that we know the width of our worksheet, for our title up here in A1, I want it to go all the way across the top of the sheet. So I'm going to select A1 to K1. And then I'm going to use the merge and center. Now I've shortened my ribbon, so I can't see quite everything, but I do still have the merge and center. It's just not labeled out anymore. The label's hidden. So you can see that here. And it looks just like double arrows in the worksheet. So I can use the drop-down list here, and there's a couple of options too. You can merge across. You can also merge groups of cells. That's what we did when we did 2 rows. And then if they're already merged and you want to get rid of the merge, you can unmerge. But we're just going to merge and center. There we go. So it's the same tool we used before. It just, excuse me, in a different spot here, and it has no label. So you kind of just remember what it is. Hope you can remember, because we're going to go to cost analysis and do the same thing. But in this case, we're going to go from A1 to K1, merge and center, and then A3 to K3, merge and center. Then under cost analysis, we want to make that a larger size. So I'm going to make it 14 points. And once again, the rows automatically adjust. All right. So now we're going to adjust here. These are some additional costs. So I want to click between the B and the C, and again, widen it so I can see all the descriptions. And then once again, we have our cost per unit, the units needed, the total. Here's our total behind the scenes. And then what we're going to turn around and charge our customers. And then what they're going to have to pay. And then our profit on each item. So the first thing I want to do is in row 12, I want those to be centered. So I use my center text alignment. And you can see they're already set to wrap text. So here we go. The first part, our total cost, that's pretty straightforward. Equal sign. And it's the cost per unit times units needed. So it's just like we did before. C13 times D13. All right, if I wanted to, I could fill handle this all the way down. Or, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I can wait to the end and fill handle it down. So I think I'll do that. I'm just going to get all my calculations worked out and formulas entered into row 13 here. And then at the end, I'll do the fill handling. So this is the other technique. Just kind of depends how you want to work. Okay, so we're being charged $250 for one of the $250 items. And we're going to turn around and charge our customers $1,125. That's a pretty good markup. Okay. Then we're going to have to put in their sales tax. And those together will be their total cost. So here's what we're going to do. Click on column G. We're going to right click and insert columns. Or you can use the tool at the top if you like. This time, rather than use the format paintbrush, I'm going to copy this tile. This is the technique I like to use. Copy and paste in column G12. And even though it doesn't make sense right now, I'm just going to type sales tax. All right, now we don't have at the top up here the sales tax. We did in trip budget, but not here, right? Here's what I want to do. I'm going to copy A2 to C2. Actually, I'm sorry, B2 to C2, just these two. That's all I need. You can copy A, which has been blank. But that has the label sales tax rate, and it has the sales tax amount. So Control C to copy, and carry that over here. And I'm going to put it under C5, and paste it there. Okay? So this time when we do the absolutes, it's going to be here to D5. But I want to take it one step further. Let's go back to trip budget here. You remember I said that in Stanislaus County, we could have an election and the sales tax could lose and it could go down. Or what can happen is they can add something to the ballot, and I'm sure you've seen this, the sales tax could go up. So that could change. When it changes all of our calculations. So what I want to do is just have to change it once. The way it stands now, let's say it went down to 7.25%. I'd have to change it here. Oops. And then I have to go back over here and change it here. Okay. So that's a lot of work for me when the computer can do it just as easily. Here's what I want to do. I want the cost analysis to extract the number from our trip budget tab. So I'm going to wipe out this 7.88%. I'm going to put an equal sign. And while the equal sign's up there, I want to click on trip budget and click on C2. You'll see at the top here in my formula, I've got apostrophe trip budget apostrophe. That tells the computer, go to the tab trip budget. And then you'll see the dollar sign, and that separates the tab name from the cell, C2. And when I hit enter, look at that, I get 7.88%. Up here, it tells me where it's getting it from. So now, let's say the sales tax drops. 7.25%. I change it here. All my numbers here in my sales tax went down. When I click on cost analysis, you'll see it's now 7.25%. Okay, I'm going to undo it so it goes back up, and that happens too. And now it's changed here as well. So for something like this, you can do it twice, or you can link it. It's up to you. It's just more convenient if you had 7 or 8 tabs and the sales tax changed for all of them. Here, you just change it once. And if these other tabs are linked to it, they'll update. So you can share information between tabs as well. All right, let's go to our sales tax, which is G13. So here we go. It's going to be equal sign, F13 times, and then an absolute, $D, $5. Or I could just click on D5 and it pops up there. All right, so the sales tax needs a couple of digits. So we're going to increase the decimal. So you'll see there's increase and decrease decimal up here. We still have that tool. Increase it by 2 decimal points. Okay. So their total cost, it's going to be just like we did before, equal sign, F13, so their cost, plus sales tax. And they're, well, when I widen column H enough, you can see how much they're going to have to pay. All right. So that's how much it's going to cost for that item. Now let's go to our profit. Here's the thing. That sales tax is there and we have to collect it, but we don't get to keep it, right? So that really wouldn't be part of our profit. So when you do the math, you're just going to look at our total cost and their total cost and subtract one from the other. So we're going to start off here with an equal sign. And it's H13 minus E13. So their total cost minus our total cost. And there's our profit, $963.65. Okay, so that gives us the calculations across. Now I said earlier, we could have fill handled each column if we wanted to, but I waited till the end. And sometimes, you just feel like doing it this way. And what it is getting each column correct. Double check it, make sure the formulas are right. Oh, yeah, they sure are. Okay. So now I have to fill handle this one down. Then these three, instead of doing them one column at a time because they're contiguous, I can select them and fill handle them all down. All right. So you'll notice that in certain items, we're not making a profit. Their total cost is less than our total cost. And you can see that represented here by the cost per unit and the total cost, and how many we're buying. So whenever the computer wants to show you numbers that are in the negative, the way this is set up now is to show them in the red. And so I'm sure you heard you're in the red, right? Well, it literally means that the red ink represents negatives. And that's so they really stand out. And you can see here, they really do stand out. So in this case, it's okay to have negative amounts if that's that's what you've got laid out. So what you would have to do, of course, is say, all right, well, we either are going to take a big hit on this, and we're going to have to make it up somewhere else, or we're going to have to adjust some of our figures. The good news is, if you say, lower the cost per unit on the White River guides, instead of $200 a day or $300, you get $200. You'll see that it will adjust things. Okay. So I'm just looking. Yep. All right. Down below, we are going to add totals. We have some zeros here. I'm going to wipe these out. And I'm going to put in here totals. So I'm going to use the right alignment, make it bold, and here we go. So here for our total costs, I'm going to use the sum. And that lassos E13 through E34, and that's what I want. I can see that's our total cost. And now I can fill handle it to the right. And here we go. So that's the sum of each of these columns. So we see our total cost, their total cost per unit, and total sales tax we're collecting, and their total cost. All right, so here's an interesting thing about these tables. You'll see my 758. Okay, I'm going to rework these. So that turns into a positive number. If that's the goal here of our best adventures, to get it into the black, then that's what we can do. So what we'll do is let's just say that for the rental for all-terrain skates, instead of 161, we're going to change that to $210. Okay, and then do the same down below, and you'll see our numbers automatically update, right? Let's go back to our hiking guides, and let's change at cell H22 each one to 250. So I typed in 250 at H22, and I'm going to paste it down. And then I missed one here. All right, we've almost got it back in the black. Let's increase the bus back to Logan. So that one we're going to make $2,200 even. Ta-da! Okay, now we're making 172. Now, just so you know, we're just playing around with these numbers. If those numbers were not going to change, then this would be accurate. You can turn in a completed assignment with negative numbers because now you just revealed that if we don't do something quick, we're going to lose a lot of money on this. But I wanted to make this a positive number just so you can see how this is going to work. Just so that red doesn't get in the way. All right, so our total across, our total up here from top to bottom with all the negatives comes out to $172. Make sense? Here's the other thing, and you can use this as a check on your numbers. You'll see here when I click on this, the auto sum went all the way to the top. That's because I copied and pasted it. I'm going to delete it. Now I'm still in cell I-35, and I can use auto sum. But the way auto sum works, it actually gives priority to the cells that are touching it. Meaning, instead of doing the column above me, above I-35, it did the row to the left of me, right? So H35 plus G35, F35, and E35. And so you can see that up here. It says sum E35 through H35. If I hit enter, watch what happens. Something that wasn't supposed to happen. Oh, wait. Yes. So we need to subtract the sales tax. Because remember, we're not making profit on the sales tax. So that is G35. Okay. So when you're adding them up, what you can do is look at the dollar amounts at the top and do the column. And you can also do a total from the left, just depending on what your goal is. All right. Now let's go down here to cell C37. And we're going to do the company profit before commission. So this is going to be the dollar amount that's calculated here at cell I-35. So I'm going to say equal sign and then click on I-35 or type in I-35. All right. So now we're going to do the commission, the dollar amount of the commission. So back here at the top under sales tax, we're at C6. I'm going to type in commission rate. I want it to be red aligned, right under sales tax. and I'll make it 8.23%. Once again, I could type it out and express it as 0.00823 or 8.23 if I put the percentage there. All right. So the dollar in commission is going to be equal cell C37 times this commission rate at D6, right? Ta-da. That's a lot of money, so I have to widen it up. So of that amount, the commission is $2,321.86. If this commission rate changes, and it might be, you know how we had negative numbers, maybe one of the ways to bring down a negative number would be lower the commission. So let's say it's 4%. Oops. So I'm going to change this to 4. You'll see the number down here, just about halved. Okay, so it's linked there. Again, I'm going to undo. It does not have to be an absolute. It could be, but because I'm not fill handling it this way or this way, then it doesn't need to be. So the final company profit is the amount before commission minus commission. So that's pretty easy. Equal sign. Click on C37 minus C38 and hit enter. So if this all works out, the company should make $25,000. All right, and there we have our figures. So what'll happen is the people who are going on our trip might get a copy of this trip budget, but they might not see the cost analysis. So the cost analysis is behind the scenes. And then once again, if the sales tax does change between, well, actually this was October 2022. Let's change that. It's supposed to be for this year. So I'm just going to change this from 10/10/22 to 10/18/22. By the way, you'll notice there's a minus there. So when I hit enter, you might say, well, why doesn't the computer do the subtraction? Because there is no equal sign. So without the equal sign, it's just going to display it as a label. So I think our cost analysis has the same date. I'm going to select it. Now it's rooted in cell D7. So I don't have to select over here to E7 too. I'm just going to copy here at D7, click over to cost analysis, click on D9 and paste. See how they both updated? Because it looks like it's overlapping into cell E or column E. It's not. It's planted and growing out in column D. So could you have copied both? A lot of people do. In this case, it makes no difference whatsoever. You get the same result. But that's one of those things that right now it works because nothing is in column E, row 9. If something is there, like don't miss it, it would cut off column D, meaning you wouldn't see the whole date. And you could widen it up, but now watch, if I widen this up, look down here under units needed, see how wide that is, and that's way off now. So that's one of those balancing acts that you work with Microsoft Excel. If I was told by the boss, you know, I want you to definitely put a don't miss it next to the dates. It's got to be there or you're fired. Okay, I'm going to do it. What I would probably do is figure out a way to move this whole date over somewhere else, or I could put it somewhere else, or even I could put don't miss it here in F9, right? So there are other ways around that. But just know, as long as it's rooted in one cell on both tabs and there's nothing next to it, then it will just grow out of that cell into the next one as needed. All right. So any questions about absolutes and how they work? Any questions about how we share data between tabs? You can, like I said before, if you had, let's say we're doing, this became really popular, and now you're going to plan one for every month of the year. So you could have, 12 trip budgets and 12 cost analysis. They can all be linked to one sales tax rate. The only drawback to this is you have to remember which one it is. Well, it's easy to find out. Just click on a tab. Usually it's the first tab on the left. So whichever one becomes the first tab on the left, that gets the amount, and that's the source. And then everything else copies off of that. The other thing to do is just click on it. If it doesn't show the number, but shows a tab name, now you go, I see what they did here. And you can say, okay, trip budget, cell C2. Let's take a look at that. You go trip budget. All right, there it is. Let's go to C2. Oh, there's the number that I was looking for. And then make your adjustments here. Okay. So we're going to be doing more of the sharing between tabs, because you do end up with a lot of times where you need to do that. And it saves you time, and especially if you have to make changes later on. All right, let's go to trip budget. Let's get to an issue with 365, and that is with printing. So I have my best travel adventures here, and I want to print it. So I'm going to go up here, and you'll see you got file. In the standard version of the desktop, if you go to file, you'll see print. Here you won't. You can see the more button, and there's print. So I'm going to click on print. All right, so once I click on print, I've got this option here. So it's going to say show a print-friendly view. I'm going to select that. And here it comes. So you'll see it selected all my text, and it squished it onto a page, but it turned the page on the side. So there's portrait and landscape. It's going to do automatically landscape, right? It's based on this paper size. I'm sorry, it did automatically portrait. It doesn't look like it, but if I can zoom out here, see how it fit there? So something like this, if you print it that size, even though we told it to use like 12-point or 11-point fonts and things, this squishes it and adjusts it and can stretch it out. So I told you in Microsoft Word that the fonts are designed to be whatever number 72nds of an inch. Well, Excel very often doesn't really pay attention to that. What it does, it makes them proportional to each other. So in a case like this, I would definitely want to change the orientation from portrait to landscape. So when it comes up, the reason is we have so much going on. Now you can see more of it. I'm going to change the zoom. So now everything looks bigger. Okay. You'll see what I told you earlier would happen is over here, it says print, like print what? And it says active sheet. So use the drop-down list. You'll see there's entire workbook or current selection. Right now, this worksheet, this is on this tab, this is it. But if we had more columns, remember I told you the hidden columns? If I selected an entire workbook, it would include those columns that were way off in like column O, it would include that. Current selection means whatever you've highlighted or selected before you went into the print area. So that's an option too, if you just wanted to print a chunk of this. You'll see here, we have another option, there's scaling. And what this does is just what I was saying earlier. It determines how much it's going to shrink things down. If I say no scaling, here's what I get. It's going to do the true point sizes. So like I said, 11 points, 11 point font would be 11/72 of an inch. But in order to do so, look what it did. It pushed it over into other pages. So there's a couple options on that. You can do some scaling. If it's too much, it'll print, but it'll look microscopic and be very hard to read. So you do have fit sheet on one page. And what that will do is no matter how big the worksheet is, it's going to fit it on one page, and one page alone. And when I zoom out, you can see it. And there it is. You still have some options here because right now I set up normal page margins. And if you remember from Microsoft Word, we can change those. And they do have some default ones, or you can make up your own. I'm going to select narrow and watch what happens to my page when I select narrow. I have the narrow margins, and I still told it to fit sheet to one page. So now when I zoom back out, see it's a little bigger, but I don't have as much room, particularly on the left and the right. On the top and the bottom, it actually adjusted it, but I don't have a problem with too much on the top or the bottom. So it doesn't show very much. But on the left and the right, it did. And that's as big as I can get it to fit on one page. If I still needed it bigger, you'll see I've got a gap here. I could probably shrink that down. You know, a lot of little adjustments we've been talking about as we go along. And that will make it fit better and make it bigger. Because your goal is to, want to show everything in as few pages as possible. We also have a couple other options here. You'll see there's format options. So right now, as we were working with Excel, we had a bunch of grid lines everywhere. They're gone. The reason is when you print, it doesn't automatically include the grid lines. But if I click on format options, you'll see I've got a choice here, and I can now include the grid lines just by putting a little check mark in this checkbox. And now when it prints, you get the grid. So it doesn't do that automatically. You have to add that. And that's true of both 365 and the desktop. Ta-da. Now, there are ways that you can change the grid lines. Remember, we added color. You can actually change the grid lines to a color. You can make them light gray. You can make them darker. You can make them thicker. This is just throw the grid lines in and let's go kind of thing, meaning there's only one style if you use this. However, if you go back to Excel and adjust the cells yourself, you can make them any style you like, any color, any weight, anything. All right, so see the bottom here, you have the button to print. Here's the thing with 365 is because we are online and in the ether, we don't have any printers physically hooked up for it to print on. But that's okay. What it does, if you hit print, it throws it into here as a Microsoft PDF. So that's the Adobe PostScript style. Or you can send it to, if you have a fax set up, if you've got OneNote set up, you can send it to those programs too, or just save to PDF. What that will do is record it as a PDF file, and then you can download that into your Microsoft Office. So I'm going to click Save. And there we go. So now I can open it as a PDF. And what I did is on mine, it's set up to my computer here. It's saved it as a downloads folder. So I'm going to go here, go to my download folder, open up my PDF viewer, and there it is. So that's how you can print, and that's true of Word as well, and PowerPoint, and all the programs, because there's no plugged-in printer to the cloud. That's what it does. But you can download the files. You can also convert this file into a desktop Excel file and print it. And you can download it into your computer and do it that way. So that's just a quick thing on printing. So in other words, you can print in 365. It just takes one extra step, a quick download. So you're either going to download the worksheet or the workbook, or you can download the PDF. And that works these days because most everybody can view and share PDF files. All right, so any questions on our absolute formulas and printing? All right, if there are no questions, then we are done for the evening. Tomorrow, we're going to do some more of the absolutes, and we're working with formulas across tabs. That's where it gets really interesting. So if there's no questions, have a good night, and we'll see you here tomorrow. Oh, somebody pointed out, Myra pointed out, cell I-35, I didn't add G-35. Oops. Let me go back to that. Yeah, we could take that out. There you go.